guess we start right here and right now. Welcome to Capital in the Morning. We are on the road. Karura Forest is the place. We have a few hashtags actually that we will walk you through in case you want to chime in on the conversation. That first one happens to be hashtag sustainability watch, and the second one is hashtag breakfast on the move. And in fact, that's exactly what we are doing, having breakfast on the move. Karura Forest being the place we have found ourselves. Climate and sustainability, the topic which we shall be tackling, and amazing panelists coming in for that discussion.
Well, before we have our panelist here, who just to mention who is going to be on the first panel, we have Mukami Njero, who's an insurance and reassurance sustainability risk and ESG. We have Njeri Wakaba, climate smart entrepreneurship. Dorothy Aseo, who I have just been told she's still on the way, but would be worth mentioning because she's still part of this panel, community and women-led conservation. And we have Peter Kaluki, who's a youth and climate justice rep. Now, that's our first panel, but before we get into the conversation, first things first, we have very beautiful guests who are seated in front of us. We are not just speaking to trees, to you that is listening to us. We actually have welcome and good morning. I know you all are looking forward to the conversation, but for us to start, it would be nice to, bring the man who is leading the Capital FM team. That's our MD, Simon Badgray, who will give a few remarks even as he opens the stage to our panelists. Good morning, sir. Welcome.
As he comes in, a quick reminder, you can also stream us. We are live on X. We're live on Facebook. See the pauses I'm throwing in there, it's for effect. I'm not sure it's working.
Dramatic
and we're
effect.
also live on our website, so please, YouTube as well. Just go there wherever you are, watch us as we have this conversation. And the guests who are here, we have an audience made up of amazing good people. So I can see some of our workmates who will also just be there. And if you do have questions, as always, at 984 in the morning, using the hashtags I've given you, Capital Breakfast on the Move, and of course, Sustainability Watch, not to mention our usual one at 984 in the morning, hashtag drive in, spelled with a double N, or 0701-984-984. Feel like I'm spending way too much time with our MD, Simon Bargurei. Spent time with him Saturday, rugby. He was a totally different human being then. Now he's a bit more serious, a bit more formal, blue suit. It's getting scary. Good morning.
Good morning, Chico, and our audience both here and online.
All right, so here's the first of many to come as Capital has decided to go to the people, go to the ground, be on the move, and deal with situations not in terms of knowing the problem, talking about the problem, but looking for solutions, being more innovative, and bringing the people into the conversation. So how about you set the stage and give us a word?
Thank you, Chico, thank you, Polaris, and our dear guests. Maybe just a quick rejoinder as to why we're here. So Capital is embarking on a thematic approach, something we began sometime in August, as far as trying to approach national issues, not just from informative, but also making sure that we're creating impact as an organization. So on a monthly basis, we elect a theme that we engage the country at large and be able to prosecute so that there's a bit of impact across. Coming home more closely at this particular month, effective month of Feb 1st to the end of the month and later into the year, we are more focused on sustainability and climate action, hence the breakfast that is here with us today. So at the risk of going off my script, let me just allow me to read a few items, just helps us prepare for the day. So good morning, distinguished guests here at Karura Forest, our esteemed panelists, partners, policy makers, members of corporate Kenya, and a very special welcome to our listeners across Kenya and to our live streaming audience joining us on digital platform around the world. And it is important to mention as well at that actually 19.6% of our 3.5 million audience on a weekly basis actually are diaspora audiences. So today we are not just broadcasting from Karura Forest, we are broadcasting from the front line of the climate and sustainability conversation. At Capital FM, sustainability is not a trend, it is not a CSR initiative, It's a strategic, editorial, and a business priority. Why? Because climate change is no longer a distant projection. It is an economic and governance reality shaping Kenya today. Kenya is estimated to lose between 3 to 5% of its GDP annually to climate-related shocks, including drought, floods, extreme weather events, and across Africa. Adaptation costs are projected at between 30 and 50 billion per year by the year 2030. Yet funding remains significantly below what is required. And while Africa contributes less than 2 to 4% of the global green gas emissions, and McHugh, remember, 17% of the total population is what constitutes the African continent. It carries a disproportionate share of the same consequences. So this is not just an environmental issue. It is about food systems. It is about water security. It is about insurance pricing and capital markets. It is about infrastructure and planning. It is about jobs and competitiveness. So that is why Capital FM is engaged. And as a media house, we influence national conversation, but conversation alone is no longer sufficient. Our responsibility is to bridge policy to execution, connecting science to strategy, government to enterprise, finance to communities, and ambition to implementation. Sustainability is broader than climate. It encompasses governance, ESG integration, sustainable finance, citizen-led conversation, innovation, ecosystems, and inclusive growth. It is about systems that endure economically, socially, and environmentally. And critically, young people must be at the center of this movement. Kenya is one of the youngest countries in the world with over 70% of our population under the age of 35. The climate decisions made today define their jobs, their cities, their health, and their cost of living. But beyond being stakeholders, young people are solution drivers, leading climate startups, advancing clear energy innovation, shaping digital activism, and redefining responsible enterprise. Sustainability is not a side conversation for youth. It is their economic opportunity, their civic responsibility, and their generational mandate. If we are to build a resilient cities and competitive economies, youth participation cannot be symbolic. It must be structural. From Karura Forest, a living example of citizen-led conservation, we ask fundamental questions. How does Kenya move from awareness to implementation? From vulnerability to resilience? From compliance to competitiveness? Capital FM believes the green transition is not a cost burden. It is Africa's next frontier. Renewable energy, circular economy, climate, smart agriculture, and resilient infrastructure represent one of the most significant economic opportunities of our time. Today's dialogue is about solutions, unlocking capital, about aligning science, policy, enterprise, and community, about ensuring sustainability is embedded in boardrooms, county plans, financial systems, and everyday action. Because if media does not elevate this agenda with urgency and clarity, we risk normalizing crisis instead of accelerating change. At Capital FM, we choose leadership. Welcome to the Sustainability and Climate Action Breakfast. Let us move from policy to action together. Karibuni sana.
Well, thank you. That is our MD, Simon Bargure, and as he pointed out, it's more than just climate. It takes a village to raise a child. Then if we consider this a child, then we need everyone from corporate to individuals, not just for the present, but for the future, which is something that one of the guests who will be coming in a bit later on, Edward Mungai Datari, said, and that's how he simplified it. It's sustainability. What is that? It sounds so complicated. It's not just ensuring that there's a future and a present, and the present doesn't take away from the future, neither does the future take away from the present right now. This is Capital in the Morning. Falaris and myself, Chico. How about we call our guests now to the stage, and that will be Mukami Njeru, Insurance and Reinsurance, Sustainability Risk.
And we have Njeri Wakaba, who's Senior Programs Associate at Village Capital. Just handling climate smart entrepreneurship. We have Dorothy Aseo in absentia, but I believe she will probably find us as we carry on with this panel. And finally,
Peter Kaluki, Youth and Climate Justice. You heard the MD of Capital FM talk about it. It is all about the youth and with the development in technology. It'll be interesting to hear from a youthful voice, Youth and Climate Justice. Peter Kaluki in the house.
now, even as we are about to throw the conversation to our panelists, who are the experts really to this conversation, I need to set the stage to the reality we are looking at as a country now. Currently, 23 counties in Kenya are undergoing critical drought. And the National Treasury have released about 4.1 billion shillings for emergency food aid, but we are here to ask, who's bearing the cost of climate change? And how is risk already shaping our economy and our society? Are we doing enough? We need to move the conversation from rhetoric to actual action. What is being done, and what part are we all playing in making sure that we are resilient, but also protecting and safeguarding the future of our people?
And that's exactly what we intend to do when we come back right here on Capital in the Morning with Phalaris and Chico. Good morning, it's Captain in the Morning, Hilarious and myself, Chico. How are you doing? Karura Forest is the place that we are at, trying to come alive, hoping for some coffee to finally be delivered. Man, I do not function without coffee. I genuinely do not function without
Drink
coffee.
some water.
We do this every morning. Hilarious is like, okay, let's go do coffee now. You're starting to bore me. And here we are waiting for coffee. I'm trying to say it louder so that the crew can hear
You
me,
know
but
what
then
should power
it'll
you
come
is the
about.
fact that today we are not in studio. We are actually out in nature.
Nature
fresh air. This should
requires
bring you
coffee.
alive.
Like you're sitting, you're looking at
No.
trees, you're sipping your coffee without sugar. Otherwise, you might as well drink tea.
Here's the thing. This is what you need to tell our audience right now: is that I brought you coffee, but you complained it was cold. You didn't appreciate the fact that I brought you coffee.
Cold and weak coffee. That's the problem.
Don't know what to do
But
with
it's the
coffee
thought that
anymore.
counts. Ooh, quick one in case you're joining us right now on Captain in the Morning. Like I said, we're at Karura Forest. Like I said, we're talking sustainability and climate. We'll tell you about our panelists in just a moment. You heard the MD. We're streaming live. You all know all the nitty-gritties. The part I forgot to mention, once again, is the fact that it's Phalaris's birthday. It just so
Stop
happens
it!
to be her birthday, and she's single for a reason. You cannot spend money on Valentine's. 2 days later, you're spending money on her birthday. That's why we're still searching for someone. So if you're willing and interested and fit the bill, then share your number. Contacts 0701984984. That's the number. We have amazing guests, and I can see some of them sitting and looking at us. The Professor, Limokoko. My goodness, it's going to be fun. But we're starting off with two different panels. How about we delve into this particular one? First and foremost, Mukami Njeru coming in. We did introduce her, insurance and reinsurance expert.
Yeah, we also have Jerry Wakaba, who is a senior programs associate at Village Capital. We have Paul Kaluki, who was very quick
Paul.
to correct us. It's like, it's not Peter. We could baptize you. Today's the day. We're in nature.
Technically,
Anything could
both were
happen.
apostles. So, hey, Apostle Kaluki.
Paul Kaluki, who is a youth program coordinator at UMIF. And we also have a new entrant to the panel, which is very important that we balance out the conversation. Someone who represents the corporate entities. We have Judith C.D. Odhiambo, who's the KCB head of sustainability. Now, we all know CSR is a thing that a lot of corporates rally behind and they say, CSR, we are putting in the money. But is it really performative or is it the true thing? We'll be getting the answers from Judith. So how about we get started by throwing a question to Mukami Njeru.
Mukame, straight on, we come in, hitting from the hips. You see the spreadsheets before the rest of us. That's 100% clear with drought hitting, 23 counties. Right now, the stories are coming out. We're seeing wastage in other places, but where it's actually quite required, it's not there. Insurers in Kenya actually beginning to price climate exposure so aggressively that certain regions like our northern counties are becoming essentially uninsurable. We can talk numbers, we can talk figures, we can talk facts like that, but then the reality is a totally different ballgame altogether. Paint that reality for us.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Mukami Njeru is my name. Thank you so much for having me. So, yes, I am an actuary by expertise, and we sit and we look at the numbers, as you said. And what we've been seeing over the last, say, 10, 15 years is that things that before were something that we call extreme risks, so what something used to happen every 100 years or every 20 years has become a 1 in 2 year event. So what do we do about that reality, as you said? So looking at what we see behind the scenes, we feel like it's important for actuaries and the people who look at the risks at the back end to come to the front end and say, yes, this is an issue. Yes, we need to price it. And what is happening? How can we make this more resilient? The CEO mentioned that we lose 3 to 5% of our GDP to climate risks and shocks. So surprisingly, insurance GDP is actually less than 3% in Kenya and most of sub-Saharan Africa. So it's clear that we actually have a lot of uninsured risks already, in addition to the volatility that we're now seeing because of this emerging trends. So what we're seeing is that insurers have to increase prices, unfortunately, and that's not obviously music to your ears. But floods, droughts, extreme heats, already producing measurable underwriting losses across most classes of business. And I've sat in insurance booths, in reinsurers as well, And what we are now saying is that we can't run away from this. It's in the forefront. And unfortunately, the impact of these extreme shocks is actually higher on the global south, despite the fact that a lot of those sort of challenges are caused by perhaps economic activity from the global north. So we're finding the vulnerable becoming more and more vulnerable, and we are in a crisis. So there's a dual challenge. Insurers are facing higher volatility, their capital is being eroded, everything is becoming more expensive. And then unfortunately for our economies, for ourselves, for the government, they actually have to pay out of their coffers for the uninsured risks. The fact that 97% of those risks are not insured. So it's a challenge for resilience, and it's something that we as risk and modeling professionals are coming to the forefront and trying to improve how we model, what we bring to the forefront in terms of catastrophic risk models. And we're part of the conversation today because we see the challenge and we're raising the alarm instead of being quiet.
It is scary because it's on the rise. The effects of climate change are becoming more and more prevalent.
Yeah.
And it's seemingly like insurance is becoming more and more evasive. You're outpricing the normal Mwananchi from situations that they have to face. And I think the challenge here is to how to strike a balance.
Exactly, and that's why for us, working with other stakeholders, working with funders, working with people who are willing to subsidize some of that cost for example, you have more insurance products being designed for pastoralists or people who are not insured before but yet are facing this risk. And we're saying, how can we actually find funding to price this risk? How can we price it better? How can we be more efficient as insurers so that the costs of distribution and so on are reduced? And all the innovation that we're seeing from the young people in terms of technology, in terms of how to distribute without using agents. So for example, you see insurance being embedded in when people are selling their produce, so you don't have to incur all those traditional costs. So the innovation that we are seeing driven by climate risks or climate change and the green movement is actually something that's coming into the insurance ecosystem and creating better structures, and that's what you can expect from us as the insurance and reinsurance industry. So there are a couple of examples to mention. There's Eka Africa, there's Pula. So now we're seeing people actually sort of taking the resources that were being used for these traditional models and putting them where it matters. And that's what we want to see more and more as we reduce the protection gap.
It's very interesting that, that comes up, and on the very same panel, we have an institution like KCB that is represented. I'd want to get Judith's quick remarks on the reality that has been painted by Mukami.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. So from the KCB perspective, one of the things that we have done so that we can be able to support especially our SMEs and MSMEs, who are mostly the ones who are affected when it comes to the climate issues that arise, is to work very closely with our development financial institutions. So one of the things that we do is to agree with them to have a guarantee, or to have an insurance, or to be able to support them in giving them access to funding and then extend the payment period. So those are the three avenues that we have used as a bank, and it's worked well, especially with the MSMEs, because they're the ones who are mostly affected when some of these climate issues come into play.
I like talking numbers. Would we have any numbers in terms of what KCB has been able to do in terms of shifting the needle year by year, and what sort of impact that has had at community level? And because we'll be switching gears and speaking to Jerry about the number of startups and where we're seeing the gaps being in terms of them getting stuck at pivot stage. So would you have any kind of numbers we could look at?
Okay. So for KCB, one of the things that we have done in terms of climate financing and ensuring that we do support the climate risk management, especially for SMEs and MSMEs, is to look at how do we increase our green portfolio. So that has been one of our biggest agendas that we have driven for the past 2 years, and also transitioning to clean energy. And so far, as of last year, 2025, we have been able to do 50 billion. So working with schools, transitioning schools to clean energy, because that has been key. Because what we had noted is that a lot of our schools are still using firewood to cook. So how do we then transition them, and at the same time ensure that we have better health care? You are able to ensure that we protect the same trees that we are always going out to plant, and to ensure that even the learners themselves are also able to have more time for their schooling, and much of it also can be used for their studies in the libraries as they read. So all these activities that we have done in terms of transitioning to clean energy, supporting women, and ensuring that we work very closely with MSMEs, especially the climate space, we have been able to achieve the 50 billion support for them.
Thank you, Judith. Now we can turn our attentions to Njeri Wakaba. Sorry for the bit of a challenge in terms of the audio, but she's the Senior Programs Associate Village Capital, which is all about entrepreneurship, one of the most powerful tools, if we're to be honest with ourselves, when it comes to accelerating climate action across the continent. More so, starting right here in our own backyard. I'm a big fan of the reggae song that says, dance yard before you can dance abroad. So how about we dance right here in our yard and talk about entrepreneurship and the impact that they can have, considering how insurance is also going to affect them, whether we like it or not. But how are they helping in sustainability and then obviously this climate fight?
Thank you very much, and good morning. So at Village Capital, we support early stage startups to unlock capital for both social and financial capital for impact startups who are solving the world's biggest problems, like you said. So how do we support these startups? One of the ways that we support them is that we run accelerator programs and programs to empower the entrepreneurs. In the other way that we support is to strengthen the ecosystems, and we partner with other ESOs, who are the entrepreneur support organizations, to co-deliver programs in different thematic areas, and in particular, this particular one in climate sustainability. And also we empower them with tools and our curriculum. And the other way that, and I think it's one of the most important one, is that we help unlock capital, right? And how we do this is that we structure, we manage capital to entrepreneurs in different variety of structures. So it could be debt, it could be equity, it could be revenue share. So these are the ways that Village Capital is coming to support startups and also like startups in the climate who are building solutions in the, this space.
When you look at agriculture, renewable energy, what kind of innovative smart startups are actually the ones on the market right now?
I'll let the colleagues in the renewable energy speak about that. But what we are seeing and the sort of startups that we are supporting right now is more the agri-food systems startups. And in particular, startups that are in the food systems. That's what we are supporting. I'll give an example of a few of our investees. Like, for example, Rare Soil is a company that tests soils and real-time data solutions. So this is like real practical solutions that they have built, where they go to the farmer, they test their soil, they let them know what is needed for their land, right? And this is what we are saying, this is a proper example of a climate action in real time embedded. So with this, they're able to reduce a lot of wastage, using unnecessary fertilizer, And this is one of the startups that and many ways that the startups that are using this sort of solution. So we are seeing a lot of those. We're also seeing an example is Keep It Cool, where they are building cold storage systems. And at the moment, as realized globally, a third of food is going to waste. And here in Kenya, particularly 40% of food is going to waste. So these startups are reducing post-harvest solutions. So this sort of startups that we're seeing in the food systems are the ones that we're seeing right now. Yeah.
Well, we always say ladies first. How about we shift gears and speak to the gentleman, the only gentleman on this panel, Paul Kaluki. Now, informal settlements tend to come up a lot in climate conversations, climate smart innovations, and you work with watu kwa ground, you work with the grassroots, and maybe here's where we look at climate justice to those that are living in these informal settlements, places like Mukuru, places like Kibra, and the immediate crisis that is food to those settlements. How do we make climate resilience a priority for a young person that is living in these settlements?
Well, thank you so much, and first appreciate this panel. I feel it goes a long way to also show how capital FM is beyond performative, and you're really intentional about intergenerational leadership, gender, and cross-sectoral, so I can congrats on that, and I hope it's not performative.
That was about to say empowerment, but it's not. Trust us.
But just taking to the question, I do engage with my fund, which is a global fund working to support global justice movements, and across three key areas, energy, zero waste, and just recognizing the power that young people bring across, the space, and how we can invest in them, how we can put resources in them, and sort of listen to them from the grassroots to understand what the field needs. And that has really helped us to know how to move funds, how to move resources to young people, how to move resources to communities. An example I'll give is a new project called Organic Rebirth. And Organic Rebirth is actually working around the issue she talked about, food waste and modern production. So there are youth in Nairobi who are actually coming together and talking to restaurants, talking to farmers markets and communities to sort of have an integrated system where people can sort their waste, and especially organic waste, so that then this becomes the soldier flies and black soldier flies that can be used as food or feed for chicken, right? And beyond that, the young people get to then engage their communities on better ways to actually reduce food waste, better ways to ensure there is proper storage systems, and actually we can do urban farming. Urban farming is part of the climate justice we need to have. Think of places like Forestry, Matari, places where Nairobi River is, the better watching, but it's quite dirty, So such youth. Thank you. It was heavy. So such youth interventions really go a long way to ensure that, one, we really are bringing them to the center of the conversation, that there's no climate justice without young people, there's no climate justice without the communities. Then two, then actually coming together to influence policies. Yeah, she just talked about how much food is wasted every day, and for a city like Nairobi that is roughly 4 to 5 million people, imagine the scale of that if we are to really deliver food solutions to them. The last bit I'll talk about is, first, climate justice for young people also looks like we need to create systems of healing. We're in a very interesting times where the young person of today is going all the way to university, then you have to trek for 5-10 years looking for a job. By the time the 10 years are over, you're beyond the youth bracket. So now, how do you plug into the system? Yeah. So one way we are intervening as philanthropy and civil society is coming in to really encourage these conversations around healing, around mental health, around really creating spaces for young people to get skilled, upskilled, and connected with networks that can really help them achieve their climate justice courses. I'm glad today we have many people from across the spectrum, government, chief conservator, we have the UNEP, we have development sectors represented. That is what young people need. Do not block the space. Do not keep the space. Do not do things performatively. And again, I think this is adding to your bonus, but I'm seeing again the audience here, the live audience is almost 80% youth. And if they're not youth physically, they're youth at heart. Now we need to actually actualize this. Let's have conversations that really broker deals. Let's have conversations that really can get young people to access not just money, but resources. Resources both financially, but also technical, getting young people into systems that can actually help them understand climate justice and how to plug into the system. The last thing I would mention on this is we also need to be aware that narratives are very important and how the whole climate agenda has been set up. For the most time, you'll almost believe that things are so gloom, which they are, but we need to be hopeful, right? In Nairobi, how do we then bring young people the message of hope? How do we really get them to see there is more beyond the doomed future that we are, being sold? So really bring the money to the people, tell them positive narratives, and encourage them to share this across the systems, and finally, allow them to also try. I feel failing forward is part of growing up. So let young people, invest in them, and let them fail forward, because it's very important for them to fail, to understand the whole climate discourse, and therefore know who to talk to, what the fallback plan is, and sort of how to navigate the sort of climate leadership journey from where they are.
Very interesting. We'll come back with that discussion. Failing forward. Sounds like a CBE, because 844, it was fail, and it's, you don't fail forward, you
There's
fail
no more
backwards.
failing.
But I guess times change. That's on a lighter note. I understand what you're saying there. But a key point that you've brought up is the funding. It's good that we have a Judith in the house. We'll be back with each and every one of them. we have Paul in the house, and then we have Jerry along with Judith. We'll be right back as we wrap up this conversation from Karura Forest on Capital in the Morning.
Oh, we can chit-chat.
It can be even like angel investors, it can be family foundation. Then you find entrepreneurs. The biggest part. Deploy. For us, it's the gap between ticket sizes of 50,000 to about 1 million.
Welcome back to Capital in the Morning. Stick around, we'll be telling you about the upcoming weekend. Believe me, what you do not want to miss out on is the Magical Kenya Open. That will be happening at Karen Golf Club, and we will have an array of fantastic golfers, including 10 of our very own, led by Captain Fantastic Greg Snow. We'll be telling you how to get there, how much money the ticket is going for, and why you need to be there, because it's not a sporting event. It's actually an experience, one that you have to have. You missed out on HSB 7s because you didn't buy the tickets early, right? Well, don't make the same mistake for MKO. Man, we saw the narrative on X and it was mind-blowing. I felt the pain for you. I was feeling the pain for you at Nyayo National Stadium, front row seat, VVIP, thinking about what you would be missing out on. So let's not do this dance all over again. It's Captain in the Morning, Falaris and myself, Chico, having a discussion on climate and sustainability from Karura Forest. How fitting.
Well, best place to be having this conversation, rightfully so. Now, as we wrap up this round of panel conversations, which, by the way, will be carrying into the next hour, a panel that you do not want to miss out on, but to our guests that are seated here, a number of questions that are coming your way, including commitments. I don't believe in having conversations without commitments, yeah, and that is the expectation that I would have of everyone seated in this room. What commitments are we making this morning to make sure that we are not just regurgitating conversations and always sticking around for photo ops? You post a very good photo and say, yeah, we had a session at Karura. Then what? So, Kaluki, you, of course, leading youth in terms of education when it comes to matters climate and resilience. Now, Nairobi is always heavy focus, is a capital. This is where big conversations happen. This is where we see a lot of impact work being done. But I want to look at the other counties. We have 47 counties in this country, 23 of which are currently going through a drought at the moment. My interest is in the programs that you're running and you're part of. The youth, not just here in Nairobi, are we involving youth across the country? What are we doing at grassroots level, even as far as the 23 counties that I've mentioned, in terms of making sure, one, education is a big part of it, and youth participation is something that we're encouraging across the 254.
Hello. Hello, check.
Let's just confirm with that. There's a Kenyan thing. Hit the mic, it'll work. Now, while we're having that, we will also come to accountability. She's talking about that. I'm talking about change and how important that will be, but that is in the latter part. Plus, we'll be able to get a question or two from the audience here at Karura. But first and foremost, Kaluki.
Thank you so much. I'll start by reading a small quote that systems change isn't only about new frameworks, but deeper attention to how we relate, how we lead, and how we belong. Now, that is an important part of, a component of the kind of leadership I bring to the space, and from a funding perspective, that you want to see young people beyond the risk, you know? That's why I said fail forward. So if we are to really tap into the youth energy and power, we need to also move in quickly, early, and with flexible funding mechanisms. So I expect people like KCB and bankers, Village Capital, even the UNEP, really to go more and scale, because they're already doing so much, but we need to scale more. We need to get out of the bigger cities, go into the communities. And it's one thing we've done. I'll give you some examples. A project called Inuka Africa that we worked on to support young people around nature-based solutions. And now really they can, what it means if we first build their capacity, give them grants, and then mentor them across the years. And you'll be surprised these young people actually end up creating social enterprises that break the funding cycles. Because one of the challenges we have presently is, you're funding a group today, and then after 2-3 years, again, they're coming, and the nature of finance or funding is that philanthropy doesn't always have the money. There's a very tiny pocket. And so how do you meet the demand? So then what we've done is we are training these young people, equipping them with the skills necessary for them to be able to implement landscape restoration and climate justice projects on the ground. But beyond that, creating lasting business models that work for them. And so in essence, what that does, it changes how philanthropy shows up for community. Quit this whole blab about fund the work. You need to fund the people. You need to allow the people the flexibility to design what systems, what projects, and what works they want implemented. And then 3, be an ally. That is something personally I've done, and maybe it's my commitment again. And as philanthropy, be allies. Can you refer these, not just youth groups, women groups, farmer groups, indigenous groups, can you refer them to other funders? Can you tell them what's real presently? And that's what philanthropy is looking into funding, so that they're also aware. Many people spend so much time having to develop concept notes only to be rejected, And that goes a long way to show how labor goes unappreciated. So then for young people outside of the city and across rural areas, I believe they need more of this support. Let's build the capacity, let's meet their needs, both with finances and technical support, and let's ensure we are doing work beyond frameworks. We are actually doing it on a relational point of view, where they belong, and in ways that they can scale the solutions that they're intervening for their communities.
Thank you, Paul. Kaluki, philanthropy sometimes doesn't have money. Warren Buffett and Bill Gates say, hold my drink. Not sure about that, 100%. But yes, we don't want them to come constantly relying on it, and that makes a lot of sense. Here's a quick fire question so that we can just steal a few more minutes ahead of news from the audience. But Mukami Njeru, I'll start off with you. If you prioritize one regulatory reform today to build a climate resilient financial system right here in Kenya, what would that be?
Thank you, and thank you so much to my co-panelists. I think it's quite an inspiring session to be part of. So it's hard to prioritize one, but from where I sit in the insurance and reinsurance space, I've mentioned the fact that a lot of our risks are uninsured. So a national policy to address the insurance protection gap for me would be key, because even if you look at America, Australia, some of those other developed economies, which also maybe probably face a lot more or similar volatility in their climate risks, in terms of natural catastrophes, you see that the process of rebuilding, resettling, people dealing with that uncertainty or destabilization that comes from it is quite fast, like in terms of how much people recover from a hurricane. When you look at the news, for us, the recovery from drought takes so long because people literally have to start from scratch. They lose their whole livelihoods. So if we actually work together to ensure that, the level of protection is already inbuilt in terms of either the government, other institutions, people being able to afford the protection they need for both their livelihoods, their homes, their places of work, then that will actually help us be a more resilient economy. And I really agree with the points that have been made from moving from policy to action. So for the insurance industry, there's something called the Nairobi Declaration of Sustainable Insurance, which in the industry started on this path maybe 7 years ago. And we have perhaps over 150 institutions across sub-Saharan Africa who have signed up to commit, to pledge. But then now we're moving to action in terms of embedding this in what we do. And as much as insurance penetration is low, in reality, insurance and reinsurance companies, they have huge assets, right, in their balance sheets that they control. And and sort of encouraging them to also direct some of those pension and insurance funds into investing in green investments is probably what we can also do as we contribute. Thank you.
Thank you. Jerry Wakaba, how about you? How do climate startups actually translate potentially into environmental solutions when it comes to real and immediate jobs, basically asking can the green economy, in quotes, realistically solve Kenya's youth unemployment crisis over the course of maybe 5-10 years?
Okay, thank you very much. And it was good to hear Kaluki, speak so passionately about the youth, because what we also have to note is most entrepreneurs who are creating these climate solutions, majority are the youth. They're the ones who are coming with these innovative solutions at the moment. So from where we are as an organization, and like Jero said about policy, is we just need to remember that entrepreneurs are the ones who are going beyond theory, and they're the ones who are building the solutions. So not just policies. So a big part of this, and it's part of the work that we do at Village Capital, is matching entrepreneurs with the right capital. So I know you're hearing a lot about patient capital, and this is in reference because we're looking at renewable energy, circular economy, and as we support seed stage startups, they require a lot of time to validate their business model, to test their pilots, to iterate. So this takes time. So what we are saying is investors, we're looking for investors who can understand that these startups need this sort of patient capital. And one of the things, to answer Chico's question is, in the next 5 to 10 years, realistically, what looks realistic is that we should involve or look for investors who understand these sort of solutions that we are building, and also involve the government. And I think one of the things is for the government to provide solutions which are like maybe also create patient capital for these startups, long-term investments for the startups out there, so that they have enough time for them to actually create businesses that are viable and sustainable. So in 10 years, let's say we need to have blended finance mechanisms, and then also targeted grant programs that reduce the risks for these early stage startups, innovators, while unlocking private capital.
And I guess that brings us to you, Judith, to wrap it all up. Judith Odhiambo, thank goodness for KCB, because money is being mentioned time and again. Corporates are a vital part of this fight and this movement. What part do you see yourselves and others playing?
So what I would say for us in the corporate environment is to ensure that we run a sustainability culture with our employees. Because there has been a way in which we have been doing things. And so there needs to be a shift of mindset even in the way we run our day-to-day business. So it means that every decision that is made, every KPI that you put out there, any innovation that we want to do, any engagement with customers or even our entrepreneurs that we are doing must have a component of the climate financing, addressing the climate challenges, and seeing how best can we be able to help our people to be able to achieve their objectives and goals depending on the sectors that they are serving, and at the same time the banks then being able to fund that. So I think the era whereby we were doing selective funding is long gone, because these are our people. Businesses need to grow, make sure that we scale them up so that then they become our next corporates that we are going to have in our country. So it's a big challenge for us that the sustainability culture must run across our institutions in terms of decision making, from the board, management, and also to all staff, so that all the elements that are required to make sure that there's a success in terms of climate financing and sustainability then can be achieved, because we are all moving in the same pathway. But when we do things in silos, things like scaling, like my colleagues have talked about, how do we scale? How do we make sure that we are innovative? It will not happen. So all of us must put in our effort and work together as partners so that then we can be able to drive the agenda.
Thank you very much to Judith Sibi, Odhiambo KCB, Head of Sustainability. One thing you can be sure of is change is constant. They'll be funding them. I remember back in the day, you couldn't have an account unless you had a certain amount to own a bank account. Now we can all be part of it because,
We all can.
like she said, corporates will change with the times and care about the people. The people live in an environment. That environment we must protect and we must make it sustainable, and that is why we're seeing the youth taking such a forefront. We have a few more years to go. They have a lifetime. Oma, we don't like talking about death, eh? All right. Thanks to our guests, our panelists, Mukami Njeru, insurance and reinsurance expert. We had Njeri Wakaba, who is a senior programs associate, Village Capital. We had Paul Kaluki, who is youth program coordinator, UMIF, very vocal, and of course, Judith Sibi Odhiambo, KCB, Head of Sustainability, right here on Capital in the morning. It is Breakfast at Karura. It is Climate and Sustainability. It's the first panel, and we'll be right back with the second one, which might just end up being a bit more feisty. Good morning.
I need to switch these off.
tunataka ionekane ile kionekana sawa kisa.
What's happening on your road, but in case you do not know, well, Google, my friend. Google is your friend. Right now we're having such a heavy conversation that we will not be giving you the regular traffic updates, but I will remind you that on Saturday and Sunday, Karen is the place to be in Karen Golf Club because we're dealing with Magical Kenya Open, the magical experience that is more than just a tournament. If you've missed out on a few things, there's so many sporting activities that are coming through. We already done with Chan last year. We've done with HSBC, Sevens did two, Shujaa, Lionesses, so proud of you. Now we're going to Magical Kenya. We still have the rally, the Safari Rally, which is coming up soon. So it's just first quarter that is packed with so much, including Belarus Omoy's birthday. By the way, it's Chico and Belarus with you.
Well, thank you for that. Speaking of Magical Kenya Open, 144 golfers from 25 countries. Of course, the men leading the charge are very good this month in Giza, Greg Snow, Jordan Noble, and the prize cap is $5 million. That's 343 million shillings. And someone asked me, what would you do with that money? Simple. I'd evict all of you from Perth. And I'll just be left here conserving the environment and just taking care of her and letting nature heal, okay? Maybe that would be the solution, but then again, we have the experts who are seated here. We introduced in not too long for us to get into the second panel conversation. I mean, this is about judging by the men and women seated on this panel. It's going to be quite the conversation. Now, you can join in on it, 07019494 at 94 in the morning, using our hashtag #5in. Breakfast on the move. What was the other hashtag?
Hashtag breakfast on the move, hashtag sustainability watch.
There we go. And it's not a conversation that ends today, Joe. No, absolutely not. We get to carry it forward. And like I said, we will leave this place with certain commitments. Now, just to acknowledge our audience, we know we have representation from corporates, from different organizations that will be getting into and also allowing questions to flow from that side, given that this side of the stage is, this is where the conversation has been happening. But we want to hear from you in not too long, but for now, our panel.
Absolutely. Second hour of the Karura Sustainability Breakfast. What the thing about that is we have to sustain the anticipation of breakfast until for another maybe 1 hour, then we'll delve into it. Still fighting for that coffee, by the way. A bit more balance, gender balance on our team up here, the panel. So how about we introduce the Mireille Atala, Chief of the Adaptation and Resilience Branch of UNEP. Heard it come up time and again, being mentioned here. Glad to have you, Atala. Alex Lemakoko is also sitting here in Brown, Chief Conservator of Forests, Kenya Forest Services, KFS, and in between himself and of course Professor happens to be Dorothy Asio, Executive Director, Green Belt Movement. On the far end, just next to us is Professor Narajan Joroge, Representative Friends of Karura, and at the far end, right next to Atala, is the one and only Dr. Edward Mungai, who's the consultant and partner at Impact Africa Consulting Limited. We had the honor of having him at the Capitol offices where he gave us a short talk, and he told us, this is not a conversation that you have within an hour, but it was so impactful and so vital that we're glad to have it right here once again. So how about we start off with you, Daktari, and you just paint a picture, the picture that you painted on our campus. There's a lot of complication and confusion sustainability is when indeed, I like how you switch mics and then you realize you were shouting all through. When indeed, it could be simplified yet extremely vital.
Thanks,
This one is for the Rangers.
Yeah. Thanks and good morning. I think that's a fantastic way to start this panel by asking ourselves, really, what does this that we talk about mean? I think it's as simple as, taking care of the future generations, but ensuring that, we are not at the detriment, we, the current generation. Let me put it differently. When we talk about sustainability, really is that development that is meeting the needs of the present without compromising that of the future. And yes, this is not something we do on the sidelines. This is something that we can also do as good business. And more speaking from a corporate perspective, when we talk about sustainability, it's not philanthropy. Yes, of course, we can talk about philanthropy, and we'll take many days talking about that. But really, what you're talking about here, is a question of how can you balance the returns and the good that you're doing, especially for the environment. And I think if we understand it from that perspective, then it makes a lot of sense for us. I mean, I was just reflecting when seated there, the seats that we are sitting on. If you notice, it's sustainable seats. And they are really taking care of those future generations. But guess what? The person who supplied these seats is making money. So it's a way of doing good, but at the same time, making tons and tons of money. Of course, it requires us, and Judith, from KCB, started talking a little bit about that. It's about the culture. We must change the way we see things. And we must see things, in a way that, of course, those future generations are enhanced and taken care of. And therefore, we start behaving differently. We all drove here. Probably each one of us have a vehicle. We've been emitting. That is the cause of climate change. Is there a better solution to that? And indeed there is. We brushed our teeth this morning. Did we keep the water running all through? Yes, of course we did. How much liters did we waste? But guess what? We assume that water comes from God. Yes, last night the skies opened and water came. But water costs. And when we are talking about going to the future, talking about sustainability, talking about climate action, these are all things that we must put into perspective. But as I said, it's not for the sake of it. It can create competitiveness. You will save money. We can be able to make money. And if we take it from that perspective clearly, it will be a win-win for the planet and a win for us, not to mention the future generations that, Apostle Paul or Apostle Peter was talking about in a few minutes. Thank you.
Now, speaking of rains and the very fact that we are coming to you live from Karura, I want us to shift gears and talk trees. And who better to lead that charge than Sir Chief Alex Lemakoko. Now, as a country, we have a very big, ambitious goal to plant so many trees. Now, in the last year, it was reported 1 billion trees were planted, but we have the Jazamiti app that says 738 million trees were planted, so there's a deficit of 300 million trees. So the big question being, where the 300 million trees? On top of that, given that we are currently going through a drought, should we then change the narrative to counting how much forest cover we have instead of how many trees we're looking to plant? Because realistically, are the seedlings even thriving? What is the count, given that we've been driving aggressively to plant trees? But we also have to speak to the reality of the forest cover that we have as a country right now.
Thank you very much. And I take this opportunity, first of all, to welcome you all to Karura Forest. Feel free, feel at home, feel safe. Secondly, I want to really congratulate Capital FM for coming up with this very, very unique and innovative approach to talking to Kenyans and the world about the current problem that the entire globe is facing. You are all aware that we currently face what we call a triple planetary crisis. And this crisis is brought about by human activity. And the crisis is basically looking at the climate change, which is currently almost unstoppable. We have a loss of biodiversity that is continuous, and the last one being now pollution and waste, too much waste across the globe. Where is this problem emanating from? and who is going to bring out this solution, to bring a solution to this. Sorry, I just want to remind you, just to inform you, over the weekend I was watching a movie called The Quiet Place. And that movie is about some aliens that attacked planet Earth. And they hate noise. Anybody who makes noise dies and is killed immediately. And the only people who remained are the ones who are not making noise. And that one perfectly relates with what's happening in today's world. The man has caused a massive destruction to our own environment. And who is going to provide the solution is only man. When you talk about 15 billion strategy that we are currently implementing, the main idea is trees and forests have a solution, provide the most impactful solution to climate action. And that's why we have to do the 15 billion and 1.5 billion every year. However, the difference between the app and the reality is that the problem is with the Kenyans. Kenyans don't like technology. A lot of them plant but don't report to the app. So we are only encouraging Kenyans to also, once you plant, make sure that you report, because the app is free and is available in everybody's phone. Now, in terms of Kenya Forest Service for us, number one, we are very, very much receptive to this kind of approach whereby all stakeholders come together and sit together and look for a solution. And I like what one of us on by the time we finish this breakfast meeting. Whose role is it to provide a solution to current problems? It cannot be the government alone. Neither can it be the Environment Ministry alone or Kenya Forest alone. Each one of us is responsible for the destruction. Each one is responsible for the pollution. Each one is responsible for degradation of our environment, and therefore each one of us must participate in seeking a solution. So mine is just to encourage ourselves and other institutions and other corporates to do and emulate what Capital FM is doing. Thank you very much.
I think it was Paul Kaluki who pointed out that he was hoping this is not just an act, it's not just a front, it's actually action. And it's very interesting that you should say that, and very interesting that he should welcome us. A few years ago it would have been the professor, but we'll delve into that a bit later on. Right now, though, I want to look from a global perspective. Kenya is, quote unquote, a so-called climate leader. But the question is it just on paper, or are we actually, from a global vantage point, which you, Mire Atala, definitely have, is Kenya a climate leader when it comes to this? Or are we pretty much noisy, unlike the quiet place?
Great, thank you very much. And for someone who represents the I Told You So organization and the science organization, it's really great to be here and to be with everyone, especially at a time where we hear a lot about a lot of misinformation and disinformation about climate. So maybe if I start from a global point of view and then zoom in on Kenya, we've heard earlier the term uninsurability and extreme weather events being used, and currently we're, from our assessment point of view, we're on a trajectory of going beyond the 1.5 degrees of the Paris Agreement. So we're not on track to reaching the 1.5 degrees of the Paris Agreement. And what this means is that extreme heat is a new norm. We're living at a time where extreme weather events essentially become normalized. And to those who tend to dismiss the science and the models, we've looked back at the work that the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change had done in the late 90s, mid-90s, early 2000s. We've looked at the scenarios and the projections, and we've contrasted the scenarios, the models, and the projections against observed data up to 2020. So from 2000 to 2020, we contrasted what was modeled versus what had happened. And the correlation is baffling. So to those who say that, we're, whether it's the insurance industry, whether it's the climate scientists or the modelers, that we're predicting doom and that there's uncertainty in the models and so on. Actually, no, there is no uncertainty, and we know where we're headed. So there is, at the very least, there is space for planning our action against those models that we know will happen. The second thing is maybe to contrast that a little bit, is that, the 1.5 degrees of the Paris Agreement is a global average. It doesn't necessarily mean that in Nairobi or in other places in Kenya, we're going to see temperatures increase by 1.5 degrees. It's a global observed average. So in certain places, like the poles, for example, we see a temperature differential of 19 degrees in comparison to averages. And this is also what's happening in northeastern Kenya. We're observing temperature differentials that are way beyond 1.5 degrees, so way beyond adaptive capacity, what we can build capacity to adapt for. On the positive side of things, when the Paris Agreement was agreed, the world was on a trajectory to 4 degrees beyond global average. Now we are on a trajectory of 2.3 degrees, between 2.3 and 2.8. So between 2015 and now, there has been a lot that has been achieved. And some of it, much of it, is thanks to countries like Kenya, who have chosen not to go for the narrative of we're a developing country, the responsibility lies in the global north, so hand us out the support. It came from countries like Kenya that, or in part, from countries like Kenya that embraced renewable energies, not only because of the potential for reducing greenhouse gases, but also because it means more access to energy and electricity, safer access to energy and electricity, and more stable access to energy and electricity. It came from countries like Kenya as well that are investing in resilience. And here we see, for example, the investment or the call for planting trees for restoration. I want to go beyond planting trees, because oftentimes we see that the fixation with planting trees essentially comes from the very palpable and tangible tracking, monitoring. You've talked about the app, but it's also with geospatial imagery. You can track the progress of tree canopy, and so it gives people a feel-good feeling, right? It makes people feel good. But not to disregard wetlands. We were talking just earlier about Nairobi having a significant amount of wetlands that are underestimated. It also is not, it's important to also look at grasslands. Someone was recently telling me that the Maasai grass is the grass that is grown in Texas to support cattle herders because of its resilience. So it's also investing about what's coming from here, what is indigenous, and giving space for nature in all of its forms and functions. And in that sense, there are some shortfalls. I would be not objective to not say that Kenya doesn't have some shortfalls. When we look at the transport sector, for example, there's a very strong push for e-mobility, whether it's e-biking or cars or otherwise. It's contrasted by a very strong push for construction of roads. So that goes in opposition to, for example, supporting public transport or cleaner transport methods. At the same time, you see that the railway is being revived. So it's a mixed bag, I would say, but with a lot of successes. And I have to say, with a lot of innovation. Innovation is a word that I don't like, generally speaking, because it goes opposite of upscaling. You can't constantly look for innovation and then constantly look for upscaling. It's opposite one of the other. But Kenya has innovated a lot, and we have been working with the banking sector, for example, on deployment of some insurance products that precisely go in the direction of less due diligence, more risk-taking, but also at the end, much less defaulting from a resilience point of view. So maybe I'll leave it at that.
Lovely. Quite the insightful perspective coming from UNEP, and I would want to get into that, especially when we see a certain push that a lot of the global South countries making at COP. I mean, every year they go in with a push for certain figures that have gotten to the trillions right now in terms of climate financing. So how much of that can it be paid out? Now we have a new commitment that was put in for 2035, and we'll revisit that. But I want us to shift gears to Professor Karanja Njoroge, and representing the Friends of Karura, where we are currently sat. And we've seen very recently, actually, on the news from last year coming into this year, unauthorized developments, and the name Karura coming up in so many headlines. And often this is on riparian land, on green zones, and looking at the Karura model of citizen-led protection, is it actually winning? Is that a thing that we should be championing right now to protect our green spaces, of course with the help of other stakeholders within the conservation space?
Thank you very much. Let me take this opportunity to welcome you to Karura, because this place where you are sitting was somebody's plot. And there were, perhaps Makoko will tell you, there may have been 500 title deeds issued for Karura. And it took the pain and sweat of a lot of people to fight to get rid of those titles. And we didn't get rid of titles, we just fenced the forest. And I was once arrested and taken to Gigiri police station that I have refused to open the gate for one of the title deed owners. The biggest danger of a forest ecosystem is the protection of land. This has been seen by many people as prime land for development. And they have not gone away, they are still in Kenya. We need to guard ourselves against those. The second thing I want you to know is sustainability and climate action cannot happen when we are concretizing our city. We must think of different ways of building our city. Tarmacs and so on, and I agree with you, it's not the way to go. We need to think of other ways of increasing habitation, human habitation, rather than building skyscrapers with concrete. Second thing is about Karura Forest. And I want here to say it's not just our duty, it's the duty of every Kenyan to safeguard every forest inch of Kenya. Karura Forest is only 1,000 hectares, but it used to be a massive forest running from Kikuyu. You know where Kikuyu town is? Take that as the southern point, and up to Kibiku. If you know where Kibiku is, it's near Limuru. That was the northern part of the forest, and it came all the way down to Survey of Kenya. But the British colonizers came and decided to plant coffee at St. Austin, and it did well, and they took most of that land, and they used to call it the highlands. I'm going to the highlands. And they brought in farmers to grow coffee. This little bit of the forest was saved only because of the railway line. They needed fuel for the locomotive engine, and they planted those damn trees called, those ones, you can see them there? Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were planted by the colonial government as a source of wood for the locomotive engine. fast track that to post-independence. The little of the forest that was left was taken away by people who took bunches of it, where what we call ridgeways today was part of the forest, and it had not been at that time. But this area was protected, I don't know, by grace of God, it was protected over time. Then came the real threat that I talked to you about, the title deeds. And Wangari Maathai had to fight. And thank you, Brenda, for the work you did at that time. And in 1998, Professor Wangari Maathai almost lost her life here. She had called all of us. I was very new to this sort of thing. And we came and destroyed every single of equipment that was building roads in this forest. I thank people like George Nyanja, but many MPs came to do that. So Karura comes from, we literally saved it from the lion's jaw. And therefore, Karura is a very special place to me and those who see the history of it. And it's a good guide. It's a good guide to us on how we must protect forest land in Kenya. Not just the land, but our trees and our... Since the saving of Karura, and it was saved by Prof, it was left like even, sorry, Banana Makoko, even KFS, I met the former KFS people at that time, and they were telling me, oh, you know, let's leave it like that because we don't want to enter into somebody's land. Then in 2002, Wangari Maathai becomes an assistant minister of forests. And we start a whole new regime of trying to see how we can develop and safeguard our forest ecosystems across the country. I was very proud to accompany her to go to Indonesia and look at what they called participatory forest management, CFAs, community forest associations. And when she came back, she and Kulundu, the former minister, the minister was Mr. Kulundu, and thereafter 005, which anchored CFAs in the law. And it still is today, despite its little tinkling with it in 2016. That is why we exist. And I would like to call upon all of you that forests land in Kenya can only be protected not just by laws, but by ways of thinking as Kenyans. We are far worse than we were during independence in terms of forests. Uganda has grown its forests. Rwanda has done fantastic work. DRC are going down. Tanzanians are the example of plantation forests in East Africa. Kenya, I am doubtful that we can say we are an example. So that's where we are. And it's good to talk the truth, yeah? That's where we are. We need to heavy lifting of ensuring every inch of our forest remains forest. I saw the other day somebody saying that they're going to give 50 acres of forest in Mount Elgon to build a town. Okay, I mean, yeah, it's up to you as Kenyans. Decide, are you going to reduce your forest cover? And we have the least forest cover. The only other country that doesn't have enough forest cover in East Africa is Somalia.
Yeah. Let me jump in here and try and bring in Dorothy Asio, who's the Executive Director of Green Belt Movement. You guys are carrying the legacy of Professor Wangari Maathai, no questions. He's just run us through history, bringing her name up, and then drops the bombshell that we're nowhere near. We're doing a horrible job. What's your evaluation of situation in terms of protecting our forests in this country?
Thank you very much, and thank you, fellow panelists, and thank you, Capital FM, for this opportunity. And yes, I think it's good to have that honest conversation on where the status of environmental conservation and matters in this country are. And we've made actually strides, but again, we've been actually eroding those particular strides. And this is where Greenbelt movement has come in very strongly to safeguard that. Because the legacy of Professor Wangari Maathai did not just endure 49 years. Actually, we are celebrating the 50 years next year, actually, for Greenbelt movement and 21 years of her winning the Nobel Peace Prize. Therefore, if you put together those years and you look at exactly what went in, where we are right now, what we are doing in terms of frameworks that are protecting the conservation efforts, investments that are geared towards that, how are we adapting to really weave in solutions that are really necessary to get us ahead? Honestly, I think we are making headways and again going backwards. But that one, we are flipping it. We are flipping it into opportunities. And I was really excited when I walked in and I had one of the panelists speaking about the youth demographic. And that is exactly where we are at crossroads, because currently the conservation efforts of this country can only be sustained in our environment currently. And therefore, Greenbelt movement has been able to tap into the legacy of Professor Wangari Maathai, deepen it, and also make sure that we are enduring it and safeguarding it by bringing on board young people. And I'm glad to say that this is something that we are looking across the country. I've been able to visit actually every part of this country that Greenbelt movement has had working. The other day, I was just talking to Mr. Lemakoko. I was in Mount Elgon. And I managed to go all the way from the border of Kenya and Uganda swamp, go all the way to Cherengani, that is Kabolet, and meet young people there. And look at them exactly how do we work together to continue safeguarding. And we had amazing conversations. They were able to express their aspirations. We were able to also express their fears, how we are even having challenges when it comes to border conservation. I mean, some of these ecosystems don't recognize borders. So like in Uganda, honestly speaking, you walk into a forest and you are found in it and you are doing anything that is contrary to the conservation of that particular ecosystem, it's non-negotiable. Cross over to Kenya, just a few meters, and things are totally the contrast. Where do we leave ourselves at? I was talking to Mr. Lemakoko and asking him, how are we going to really work around with such kind of arrangements and ensuring that we are not left behind and we do not actually pull other countries behind in terms of their efforts? And through also the work that we are doing with Greenbelt movement, we've been able to leverage on partnerships. And these partnerships have been very instrumental in getting things ahead. And that's why I said flipping all that into opportunities.
Dorothy, allow us to let Lemakoko jump in here, because one of the things that have been mentioned is Karura Forest. Felari is talking about a hotel or something being built here. And
private development.
Private development. And it's a tricky one because there's eco-tourism, which then River Cafe, we're going to enjoy food from it. That's pretty much something that could be considered ecotourism and is important to have at a place like Karura Forest. So when we're fighting things, are we fighting it from a foundation of proper knowledge, or are we just going with the flow being anger at anyone who's taken the forest, for example, Karura, away from friends of Karura? How would you rate protection of forest in this country?
Thank you very much. I just want to assure you that we are on course when it comes to securing our forest resources in this country. Things are different. They are not like before. What Professor did not tell you is that during this struggle to have this forest remain as a forest, the integrity remain, there was a government hand. The government was very, very much, in fact, the gazettement of this forest is a direct indication that government is very serious about conserving this forest. Of course, what happened was that there could have been individuals that that wanted to grab the forest, but it took effort of all of us, not just one person. So it's always good to remember that a good thing is an effort of all of us, including government. Now, when it comes to Karura development in Karura Forest, there is no development in Karura Forest as of now. In fact, we allow eco-friendly facilities like the River Cafe, which has minimal impact, negative impact on the environment, because you need a place to take some water when you're enjoying yourself here. You need a place like this. This is a canopy. Well, if there was no these canopies, then we will not be enjoying being here. So what we are saying is that much as, yes, we know that we have a number of challenges in this country. Of course, you know, the biggest problem in this country, people are free. There's too much freedom. And because people are sometimes abusing the freedom. You want to make an arrest, but this person does not, is able to go around. We have cases of people grabbing the forest, and we have to go around courts, even allowing people, you know, to place, you know, legal matters that are obviously not going to pass through the legal processes. So basically what I'm saying, we need, as Kenyans, to work together. Both the national, the government, the county government, the private, and non-government organizations towards conserving our forests. Thank you.
All right. One thing I would love to know is the relationship between Lemakoka and the professor. I mean, friends of Karura and KFS. In terms of, are you guys working together specifically for Karura? Because in 2025, there was a lot of drama that was going on around, a lot of legal battles. So I'm wondering if we're working together and we feel like we're taking the right strides. He believes we are. What about you?
We are working together. At least we are working together with Kenya Forest Service. There were issues that they raised. We have been trying to resolve them. The issues, I don't want to prosecute the thing here, but we are working with them. Yeah. We are trying to figure out how to, each one can do their own thing together, just like we have done in the last 16 years. And there were no issues. And I can tell you that this is the best model of any forest management in the Republic of Kenya. Take that to the bank.
All right, so perhaps we should learn to replicate that. Turn our attention now to the
I just want to confirm. I just want to confirm that we're working together.
Okay.
We have resolved the issues. The issues were mainly about the money, but the money now we are controlling jointly, and this money is being reverted back for the conservation of Karura and other forests. So we have no challenges as of now, and we agree. We have a joint management committee, which I attend as in person. So we are working together. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to clarify that we have not finished the issue of money.
For two people
Just a minute. It's okay. It's okay. This is, you asked us for direction. We have agreed that all the income for the forest must go into a joint account, and that's okay with his people. But as a CFA, a partner in this work, we have what called user rights. A user right that we have are the bicycles used to rent and go into the forest, and that money comes directly to the CFA. Are we together? We have a restaurant here, and that restaurant, you can go and have food. That money comes to the CFA. Those two events have not been resolved. And without money, the CFA cannot exist. So we have a journey to travel, but we are together, we are talking.
All right, as you can tell, climate change just happened right here in your view. Let's turn our attention to the audience, perhaps someone with a question, and then we can wrap up with final comments. Anyone with a pressing question? Like that. Okay, so we have one question. Just let us know your name as well.
Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Sherry Gaki from Greenpeace Africa, and my question is directed to Mr. Lemakoko, and it's in regards to also what Falaris was asking about Jaza Miti app and just accountability when it comes to the trees that we're planting. You've mentioned an issue with the app and Kenyans not wanting to take it up or take that technology up. I just wanted to know if this sort of digital reporting was or has been anticipated as a challenge. What contingency systems have we put in place to counter this? And also, has the ministry conducted any? The ministry also KFS. Have you conducted any user assessment to just know why people are not using the app? Are there any technical barriers, or whether the app is actually user-friendly? That's just one part to my question. But the other one is also just to get more insight on whether there has been any assessment into the national survival rate of the trees planted under the 15 billion campaign. And do we have anyone who independently verifies the number of trees planted and those surviving?
Question over to you, Mr. Lemakoko. It's a very loaded question.
Thank you very much. I see the difference between the reported figures within the app is as a result of other people. Well, once you plant, you do not update the app. So for those ones who don't manage to update the app for various reasons, we use other means. We have other systems like the national administration. We have other government agencies. We have the NGOs. We have the community forest associations. They also do their own reporting, which we merge, and then we have now the final figure. Now, in terms of whether there is a problem, of course, it's an app that is under development. We are engaging other stakeholders to improve it so that, first of all, it has adequate coverage. Two, with the Safaricom also, we're working together, and also to make it as simple as possible so that reporting becomes easy. As to whether we have any independent verification, I welcome all of us to look for a solution. Yeah.
Survival rates?
The survival rates, we normally use survival every season. We carry out survival rates. I don't want to speak so much about it now because I don't have the figures, but we have had fairly good survival owing to the good rains we've had for the last 3 years, except now that we are having a drought for the last 1 month. But we're happy now, at least we have some rains. So I will not give those figures for now.
Well, any other questions? Oh, several hands are up.
Two very quick questions. Right here, if we could get the microphone to them.
Thank you very much. My name is Tobias Bele from Kenya Climate Innovation Center. I have a question for all the panelists, if you can weigh in. A lot of Kenyans, unfortunately, believe that climate change is a facade, it's a hoax. It's something elites talk about in such forums, and some even believe it's a money-making phenomenon. You mentioned a lot of disinformation and misinformation around climate, around sustainability. Does it worry you guys that a very high number of people think this way? And what do you think is the best pathway forward as far as behavior change is concerned? Because what we are talking about here will not just take up the people that are properly aware of this, it will not just take the elite, it will not just take the government, it will take a collective action across the country. What do we need to do as far as behavior change is concerned so that it can be effected to the grassroots level?
Yeah, I think I want to take that question, Tobias. And, I know you're in communication. Last week, when I had a discussion with Capital FM, I told them that they have a duty and responsibility to preach the gospel. I think what is needed, is to move the conversation about climate change, sustainability from boardrooms, to where it belongs in the localities. People in communication, I think they are the ones to read the narrative. And that lead the call to action, that I was putting to Capital FM, that we must speak the language that people can be able to appreciate. That language is very simple. It's a language of what is it in for them. And if we show them exactly what are the benefits that they'll be able to draw from it, we will be able to see transformation. So again, I call you to action also together with Kenya Climate Innovation Center. Let's push the narrative to the masses and push the right narrative. That way, we will be able to change. And probably even the role of government will just be about enabling. The rest we will be able to do because there is that which will be in for us. Thank you.
While we're doing that, while you still have the microphone and we're quickly getting the final question, could you just break down carbon credits and how that, basically for the normal Mwananchi, could be something that's in it for me?
Yeah, and that's a big discussion, but also a very simple discussion. We've known, this whole discussion about carbon credits, in different perspective. I think it was last year but one, that there was a big hype, there was a big messaging that we should keep our carbon credits and, But when you look at it critically, what is a carbon credit? I mean, it's a reward for those who is doing a good thing to the climate or to the environment. And why should we, not let them benefit from it? If women in the rural areas are cooking, using cocoa network products, biogas, clean cook stoves, I mean, for sure we should let them, because ideally then they would be cutting trees. Now, it's a question of, transparency and accountability. I think the biggest problem is how much do you pay them, for that which they are saving us. And therefore, it's a question of ensuring there is integrity in terms of the, the money that they are getting and the transparency about that. But really, I would encourage carbon credits, because that's the way we will incentivize those who are doing good things for the environment. And also, on the other end, there's those that who are committed, yes, we have emissions. By the way, they try to work as much as possible to reduce their emissions. And once they reduce their emissions to come to net zero, to where they have zero emissions, then they have to incentivize those who are doing good things and they net off. So to me, it's no-brainer. This is a fantastic thing. We just need transparency. We need structures, and with that, then for sure we'll be able to make a difference. Thank you.
Morning radio, sadly we've heard a cuss word, transparency. In this country, that's a word that you don't use so loosely. Final question.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Catherine Kiboy, representing JW Marriott International. My question is pegged on governance. Someone mentioned about working in silos, and most of us, obviously in corporate, we have KPIs to manage, and we work in silos, and everybody's doing a great job. But is there a governancing body that will hold us accountable? And one of the things we don't talk about is accountability, because yes, we are doing all this work. Yes, as Kenyans, we are talking, and we talk a lot. But who is holding us accountable in all these practices that we're doing, so we make sure we're measuring, as you said, reporting, and making sure that we are sustainable all around and continuously being sustainable? Thank you.
Maybe I can pick this up. So the first bomb was transparency, and then the second one is accountability, but they do come together, don't they? So at UNEP, our role is to keep the global environment under review. So we do work at a global level. But the point that you are mentioning, from the private sector has been coming in primarily through voluntary commitments and voluntary actions. And what we've seen is that there's a global task force on climate disclosure. That's when any private sector entity is essentially disclosing how much, doing their own greenhouse gas inventory, disclosing what is their climate strategy, how much they've invested, how much, and over time, how much they've reduced their carbon footprint, including how much is done through changing the own practice and, for example, the sourcing of energy of the company versus how much is done through offsetting via carbon credits by purchasing the right to pollute via carbon credits. And then on the other hand, as investments in nature also started increasing, we saw the creation of the Task Force on Nature Disclosure, which goes with the same rationale of investing in nature, investing in conservation, natural resources management, reducing footprint on water. That's a critical aspect of resilience and adaptation, but also maintaining ecosystems for the purpose of the services that they provide us. Now we're seeing a convergence. It still remains a voluntary voluntary reporting based on voluntary commitments and voluntary accounting. There are third-party verification bodies that are now coming up with the purpose of putting it all together. There's been a call actually for the UN to house such a body, but there's the difficulty of we work for and with member states versus engagement with the private sector that is still quite marginal in the intergovernmental space. So that could be something, you're talking about commitments, it could be something that governments also, who are our member states, start doing, is carving out more space for not only civil society organization, that is happening. We have what we call major groups and stakeholders. Youth is represented within them, civil society organizations, private sector, and I have to say cities and subnational governments are not. So for example, here, going back to your question on how is Kenya faring, the governor of Kisumu, or the state government of Kisumu, is making huge strides. But that's, you know, you've got the vertical silo of national to subnational to cities, and then those horizontal silos, and we're still not seeing enough space for the subnational governments and the cities, and that could be a commitment that could be made. Thanks.
Thank you very much. We have, Sandy,